Hello and welcome back to another video. Today here again on Forza Horizon 5 to take a look at another brand new addition to the Forza series, which is this Citroen BX4TC. To get hold of this thing, all you have to do is complete 20 points of the spring season of this festival playlist, which as you can see I've done by doing the trial, the event lab, seasonal championships, photo challenge and the 4 monthly rivals at the beginning of the series. This French piece of tin, with styling clearly inspired by a shoebox, produces just 197 horsepowers and 294 torques from its 2.1 litre engine, whilst weighing in at 1280 kilos. This particular model of BX is actually a homologation car, so that Citroen could go Group B rallying, but compared to the likes of the Audi Quattro, it was dismally slow, despite also being all-wheel drive like that car was, so nobody remembers the Citroen. To meet the homologation requirement to be eligible to participate in that, they apparently had to build 200 of these shoeboxes. However, because it was so awful, nobody actually bought one. They sold just 86 of those 200 cars, having to apparently scrap the rest of them. Overall, the Citroen is rated at C567 here in Horizon 5, and to be fair to it, it felt faster and more enjoyable to drive than the stock numbers would initially suggest. Of course, having to test this thing out at the Baja circuit. As you can probably tell by now, I'm not the biggest fan of this thing. It's probably my least favourite car in the update, because, well, I mean, it's just a box. One thing I do particularly like about it, though, is the interior. That is incredible. Although for some reason the pattern on the front seats is much smaller to the pattern on the back seats. I don't know if that's a mistake or if it's genuinely like that. The Citroen is available in a very varied selection of 2 manufacturer colours. You can have it in white or black. And it comes with different coloured stripes depending on which one of those you go for. But to change it up a bit, I think I'm going to apply the black. In terms of further customization and upgrades then, we have a Forza front splitter, which unusually doesn't have the hideous tow hook, so looks slightly less awful than usual. And we, of course, have Forza Aero, but again, it's the sort of classic style wing rather than the hideous style wing. We can also do a wing delete, but I think it looks rather good with the standard one. We have one engine swap, a 3 litre inline 6, which sounds a bit like that, and we have a rear wheel drive conversion if you want to make it worse than it already was. Apart from that, everything is kind of as you would expect. There's all of the tyre compounds that we see on most cars in this game. You can increase your tyre widths to 245s on the front and 245s on the rear, as well as bringing out track width if you want the stance of the car to be slightly more aggressive, which does look a lot better as usual. There is of course also your clutch upgrades, transmission upgrades, driveline upgrades, diff upgrades, and platform and handling upgrades. You can change your brakes, suspension, which does drop the ride height quite a lot, so does the drift suspension. There's of course anti-roll bars, a roll cage, and weight reduction, full weight reduction, taking it down to 1,076 kilos, and then you have all of your usual engine upgrades. At this point I, as ever, went to apply a B-Class tune again, equipping one from K1Z Bard, just like I did on the Lotus yesterday. This one brings power up to just over 300 horses and applies full weight reduction, as well as street suspension and tyres. I then joined for the second race of a Horizon Open session at the Vista Del Mar Sprint, getting a great start thanks to the all-wheel drive that this car retained, before being brutally murdered by a much overrated Toyota Supra. And then, after not the best driving from me, I somehow managed to end up back in 3rd in this first race. The final race of this adventure took us to the Playa Azul circuit, where I was given a lovely pole position start. That, combined with the all-wheel drive launch of this Citroen, gave me a good lead early on, which I eventually lost to an Civic. And then I proceeded to miss a checkpoint and drive into every wall around the circuit, so I ended up in 4th place. That was the end of that set of races, so I joined another, kicking things off at the Marigold Sprint. In a lot of these races I was getting a poor network conditions message at the start, which I don't really understand, because it seemed fine, and I did check my internet speeds after this. They all seemed to be where they usually were, so not quite sure what's going on with those, but it seems to throw it up even when there isn't poor network conditions. Anyway, in this race there was so much bumping and chaos at the beginning that I don't really know whose fault any of it was. The Skyline though clearly thought it was my fault, and an attempt was made as we headed onto an bridge. He did attempt to push me off said bridge. He did eventually then drive straight into a wall though, and gave me the place back, so it was another 4th place finish for the Citroen. Second up was the Sierra Verde Sprint. Here I quickly got up to second, and was then stuck behind that Skyline again. And a little while later, after a Civic had overtaken both of us, I did attempt to pass the Skyline, but it was a bit clumsy and I ended up killing the Nissan slightly, which they didn't take very well, deciding to push me out of the next available checkpoint. And finally we went to the Los Jardins circuit, again getting a good start and moving up to second. After some pretty poor driving from me though, I lost a couple of places, finishing in 4th. So actually, in terms of results, the Citroen seems worse than the Lotus I took a first look at yesterday, but there was more competition here, and the races were much more chaotic. I actually think this Citroen feels faster than the Lotus when upgraded to B-Class, but it didn't perform the best, although, yeah, I'm not sure it was really a fair test of the Citroen in this one. It was pretty chaotic out there. But still, I'll probably end up reverting it to stock after this. And that is going to do it for a first look at this brand new Citroen here in Forza Horizon 5. It is a kind of cool thing to have added. It's not my favourite thing from the update, but then it was a pretty amazing selection, so it's not all that bad. I do kind of get why people love this thing, just because it's that underdog Group B car that people haven't really heard of. Stock, it was actually surprisingly good to drive, and surprisingly fast, and upgraded it was possibly decent, but it wasn't the cleanest set of races to really give a good idea of what this thing's actually like, so I will after this be reverting it to standard. As ever though, do let me know your thoughts on this brand new addition to the Forza series, and on this update as a whole now that it's kind of come to an end. But for today's video that is going to be all, so thank you very much for watching, and I will be back with the next one very soon.